Hello everybody, my name is Sean McDonald, and tonight I would like to talk about a subject that I think is very pertinent to the world we live in today. You see, every day, according to the CDC WISCARS report for their 2015 to 2018 fatal and 2015 to 2017 non-fatal injuries list, 87 children, teens, and young adults across the United States are injured and even killed by firearms-related accidents, primarily by those weapons that are unattended that should have been locked up in the first place. In Florida alone, there are over 430,000 registered firearms and countless others that aren't registered, so that leaves a lot of weapons lying around for children to get their hands on. So the notion of gun safety should be a vital lesson given to all American children from a young age to prevent these tragedies from preventing tragedies happening in the first place. I believe there should be readily available lessons for children from the youngest ages that they are able to understand complex concepts so that the values can be ingrained as early as possible. Now, many people would say that teaching children so young would be useless, as they won't understand the gravity of the situation, or they just say that their children will never come in contact with guns anyway. But I still believe it is a valid point that all children should have at least some basic information when it comes to gun safety and what to and what not to do when they find one. And here are a few reasons why. The first reason is children are very adventurous and like to go exploring all over the house, finding things you both do and do not want them to find. According to Sarah Erdman, writer for NAEYC.com, in her 2018 column about young children, a study conducted by Baxley and Miller in 2006 found that 70% of children knew where the guns were being stored in the house. But the problem is 36% of those 78% that were asked admitted to handling the gun without their parents knowing. I believe that children should be taught where the guns are in the house, but they should also be taught not to touch them and keep their hands away from them. More times than not, when a child finds a gun, they usually just want to touch it, but it's in those times when they decide to pick it up and actually pull the trigger is when the bad things tend to happen. For an example I use myself, as when I was growing up, my father was a police officer, and from as far back in my memory as I can go, my dad always taught me what to and not to do with his duty gun. Usually, if it wasn't on his belt and it was sitting on the counter, it was not to touch it. If I had a question about it, he'd unload the gun and show me safely. Now, I understand that not every person has a father or a mother or somebody in their family who's a police officer, but that doesn't mean that any family, whether they be pro or against guns, police family, military family, or just a normal family that has guns in general, shouldn't have some type of training when it comes to firearms. Because in the United States, there are guns all over the place, and sometimes finding them is not a hard thing to do. Now, my second point is perhaps the best way to keep kids safe from guns is to just not have them in the house in the first place. And while that is a valid point and a surefire way to make sure kids won't get hurt with firearms inside your house, that doesn't prevent them from hurting themselves with guns they might find in other places. Take, for example, if your child finds a weapon in a park. If they find the gun and aren't properly instructed on what to do, they may pick it up and think it's a BB gun or an air gun or a Nerf gun and start playing with it, and they could accidentally shoot and injure or kill a fellow child or another adult that's in the park, and it causes too many problems. If the child is taught not necessarily to fear the gun, but to respect what it can do, and on what the dangers the gun poses to them and others around them, then they will be more likely to leave the gun alone and go find somebody than to mess with it themselves. And since guns are a prominent part of the United States, being that it is our Second Amendment, it's important for people who both do and do not own guns to know what to do and what not to do when firearms. Think of it kind of like herd mentality or herd immunity. If more people have a certain or build up more immunity to a pathogen, less people will get it. Same thing with gun safety. If more people know how to do it, then less gun-related incidents are bound to happen. My third point is maybe the concept is too difficult to teach children in the same way as we do adults. Is there any way to make it easier for children to understand? Well, actually there is. Because back in 1988, the NRA, or the National Rifle Association, created the Eddie Eagle Gun Safe program. And according to Lisa Monroe, the original creator of the curriculum, the program has been helping to teach the virtues of gun safety to children for over 30 years. Dr. Monroe created a very in-depth and easy-to-access curriculum that children access from using the official NRA Explore page. Children can learn lessons about gun safety, take tests, print out coloring pages, and even watch videos of Eddie Eagle and his wing team as they have a situation where they find a gun in a park. Now, the video is a little hokey, but it gets the point across and it's fun and informational for the children. And to quote the slogan of the Eddie Eagle program, stop, don't touch, run away, and find an adult. My fourth point is when exactly is the correct age to teach a kid about gun safety? Some people would say, as soon as they can. They need to learn it from birth. Now, while that's not practical, I think a better answer comes from one Jeff Johnson, a writer for the NRA, in his November 4th, 2019 article, How to Tell Your Children If Your Child is Ready to Learn About Guns. And basically he says is, wait until the child expresses interest in the gun, because if they don't express interest, they won't be likely to touch it. But if a child expresses interest in wanting to touch wanting to learn about the gun, they're more likely to touch it, and thus causes the problem. Now, like I said, not everyone can have someone who has firearm experience in their house to teach them, but having the nation's leading firearm advocacy group give out free information is a very good thing for children to have, and very easy to access. My fifth point is, if there are to be lessons held for children to have gun safety classes, where should they be held, and exactly who should be teaching them? Now, going off the track record that the United States has had in the last 20 years, I believe that guns should be nowhere near school zones. But I believe that it should be some type of extracurricular activity, perhaps a summer camp, or held in a YMCA or something of that sort, so that it is a place they can learn, but it is not somewhere that a problem can occur, like a school. Now, as to those who should teach the students, I need to caveat as one thing. As the person who teaches them should not make them fear guns, but as Brandon Curtis, a lead editor for concealednation.org, said in his June 2016 post titled, Here Are 4 Reasons Why Gun Safety Should Always Be Taught to Kids, he said, and I quote, fear makes children anxious, worried, and unsure around a firearm. And that's true. If a kid is scared, they won't know what to do and may do something rash, like try to pick up the gun and run it to an adult. So, when they're being taught about the gun, they should have someone who's very experienced with them. And I have 3 possibilities. The first one is police officers. Police officers are usually shown to children from a very early age, such as in career days. They come in and tell them about what it's like to be a police officer, not to do drugs, and usually have fun and things. So kids are usually pretty accustomed to police officers from a very early age. So a police officer would be a great person to instruct children on what to and what not to do with firearms. Another good example would possibly be some type of soldier, perhaps a range master for a local military installation, as a range master is experienced with all types of firearms, so he'd be good. The only problem I could see is that children may not see soldiers in the same light as policemen, so they may not listen as much. The third and final choice would just be the most cost-effective and just be a normal firearms instructor, but I don't see them working as well because they might not be seen as an authority figure and children may not listen. Now, there will never be a perfect class or a perfect teacher for the children, but these are a few good steps to get them in the right direction. What about a place for parents to learn how to teach children themselves? Well, there is a group called Project Child Safe, a branch of the National Shooting Sports Foundation that has been providing help in doing that since 1999. On their site, called projectchildsafe.org, it provides information, materials, and all other manners of useful information that parents and law enforcement can use to help children understand gun safety. Along with this, they also help to provide wire locks to people so that they can keep their guns safe for free if someone can't get the access to them. To round out this speech, the general consensus of guns in the United States is a very mixed bag. Some believe that certain guns should be banned altogether, and others believe there should be less restrictions on the type of guns people should be able to carry. All of those things are important to look at, but the one thing that I think should be universal between both sides is that people should have gun safety and they should be taught from as young as they possibly can. The more people that are informed on how to safely handle a firearm, the lower the number of gun-related accidents overall will go down. Now, will teaching kids not to touch guns and get an adult always stop the accidents? Of course not, but it is a way better to plan ahead than to be caught off guard. In a nation that holds rights to firearms in such a high regard, the notion of generalized safety courses should be given all over the United States. Thank you and have a good night.